CPI report came out, I don't know, last week.
The 15th?
Fairly recently. It was kind of a little bit worse than expected. Like,
a little bit.
Like, inflation was a few fractions of a percentage point higher than some experts predicted. Prices overall went up 3.7% year over year in August. It was 0.6% up from July to August.
Now, that's the largest it's been in a year.
Yeah.
0.6 is the largest month-over-month increase over the last year, which is concerning. You don't want to see inflation at 0.6, but when you dig deeper, it's not that scary.
Yeah, it's not the core inflation, which if you've watched any of our other CPI report segments, you know what the Fed and kind of is the more defining characteristic of inflation is core inflation because it strips out food and energy, which are really volatile. The majority of this month's inflation came from higher energy prices. Russia and OPEC cut off, or they reduced some of their oil production because they wanted to raise prices, and that's exactly what happened. So
that's all it takes.
Energy inflation was about half of the inflation that happened in the past month. Besides that, something that I found really interesting was car insurance inflation went up. I think it was like 2.4%, something like that. It was one of the other biggest line items as far as the month-over-month inflation. And I was curious about why exactly this is, and it turns out it relates to the conversation we just had, where these rising profit margins on vehicles means that insurance companies need to charge more, because if they're going to replace cars, then they're going to be with more expensive cars. So insuring these cars, and this kind of makes sense, right? That insurance inflation is going to trail a little bit behind the actual car price inflation. Mm-hmm. So that's what's kind of hitting now. It's contributing to the overall number. It's also, to me, a perfect example of why inflation is not always a money supply thing. Like, yeah. This is just executives who want to reduce the supply, and thus prices go up.
Yeah, I feel like this is the perfect nail in the coffin for monetarists if you're actually paying attention to the news.
Yeah.
Like, monetarists believe that the only thing that affects inflation is the amount of money in the system. That's like obviously not true, because when we just reduced the amount of oil in the system, we saw inflation.
Yes, supply so clearly has an effect. Yeah, so besides that, like the other big items that I found, there were a few food items that inflated a lot that I don't have an explanation for. Jet fuel was actually like double the amount of inflation as car insurance. Wow. Because oil.
Oh, right, yeah.
So it's almost entirely oil. I'm not worried. I do think the Fed might raise rates again. They could. I'm like 50-50.
I think they're going to keep it at what they are, or what they're at right now. And okay. I think the concern on Wall Street is that they keep it here for too long.
Sure.
I think that's their concern right now, because again, what the Fed watches is core inflation, and core inflation has gone down, and it actually went down at a larger rate than it has over the last 4 months.
Yeah.
Like, this is one of the fastest rates of dropping in the core inflation. So they're actually pretty good. What you want to see on month over month inflation is 0.16. 0.16 is what you want your month over month inflation to be. So when we go down the list, food, it's at 0.2. All right, nice. All items less food and energy. What are we at? We're at 0.3. All right, so it's double 0.16. Not good.
No.
But that's like basically where you want to be. But then when you go to energy, what is it? Energy? 5.6 month over month. Okay, yeah. Well, there you go. There's your big problem here. And, you know, as we get a greener economy, this number starts mattering less and less and less. Mm-hmm. As we deal with the war in Ukraine, and then not even to mention the coups happening in Western Africa, the coup in Gabon over the last couple of weeks. The Gabon, whatever, yeah. is one of the largest oil producing nations. It's the second smallest member of OPEC, but it still produces a ton of oil. The CEO of the largest oil company there says that their production hasn't been affected by the coup. I don't buy that for a second. I don't buy that for a second. Your country went through a coup, okay? I highly doubt that all your supply chains have very, very easily survived all that.
Yeah.
So all of the political instability in Western Africa is going to inflate and deal with energy prices. But what the Fed knows, because they know this, is that their raising interest rates is not going to help oil prices.
Yeah.
It's not going to help oil prices. The only thing that Fed raising rates can do is affect asset prices. So when we talk about housing, right, that is going to be directly affected
Yes.
with this. And we see housing starting to slow. And that's what Chairman Powell said a long time ago. He's like, our goal is shelter. What we are looking at is shelter. And we said a long time on the show that shelter is going to be one of those things that actually takes a long time to get into the effects of, show the effects of the interest rate hikes, because people sign leases to apartments. People have fixed rate mortgages. People have variable rate mortgages that may only change every couple financial quarters. So these are things that take time to implement. We now see that the rises in interest rates are doing their job.
Yeah, I'm hoping they keep rates as they are, because the trend is still downward, and hopefully these housing price results continue to trickle in. The only unfortunate thing is core inflation still is over 4%.
Yeah.
Right. And they're aiming for that 2% number. So they really do need to watch this decline continue steadily. Otherwise, the rates are going to keep going up.
Yeah. And the president of Moody's has tweeted out something recently that I thought was really interesting. Out of nowhere, he says that the target for inflation is 2.5%. And everyone in the comments is like, no, it isn't. Like, it's been 2% forever.
Interesting.
Why would you say it's 2.5%? And I honestly think that they're going to make us normalize to 2.5.
Cool.
Is it?
Is it not?
I don't know. I don't know if it's cool or not. I don't know if I have an opinion on it. I think the 2% inflation is going to be a little bit of the thing in the past as America now reorientates its supply chains.
It reorients was the right word.
Reorients?
Yeah.
What did I say?
You said reorient. You said reorient, and then you corrected yourself to say reorientates.
Is reorientates not a word?
No, I don't think so.
Maybe I'm right.
Anyways, I said cool because I don't care.
Oh.
Because I don't think 2.5 versus 2 as the goal for inflation is going to affect anything.
Yeah.
Besides maybe keeping interest rates at their low rate of like 5.5 or 6% right now.
Yeah, I totally get that.
So,
but now, since we have the CPI report for August, we can tell you what real wages have been. So last week, we talked about the jobs report, and we saw wage increases go 4.5% up. We have inflation at 3.7%, so that means we have real wage increases of 0.7% year over year. So wages are still outpacing inflation as of the month of August. And if you account for core inflation, not the CPI, wages do a little worse. But overall, we're on the downward spiral here. We're doing good. Inflation's going down.
I hope that wage increase comes my way pretty soon.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. We all do, don't we? But yeah, wages are up. So
Yep.
that is always awesome to see, especially after 2022. I mean, 2022 was so bad for median household incomes.
Oh, yeah.
So now finally seeing that we're on the upper end of that. And you know what? This union activity is going to help that.
Definitely.
Right? This union organizing, 150,000 workers, that's going to impact median wages across the country for sure. Right? So that's awesome to see.